All right, ladies and gentlemen, can we start? I think it's about time. First of all, I would like to thank you for coming over here because it was quite bold act to come here because probably I'm the only one person who has no photograph in this book, so you actually had no idea what is expecting for you. I have a few stupid questions right in the beginning. Is there any one of you who is involved in teaching? Not studying, not learning language, teaching. You teach someone anyway. Okay. Is any one of you familiar with link methods and has ever used a link website, LingQ? All right. Okay. Okay, there are new people out there. All right, because I'm asking these questions because mostly I'm gonna be speaking about link and teaching, and the way I have managed to integrate my way of teaching and link methodology, input method developed by Steve Kaufman. But let's get started from the very beginning. So my name is Konstantin. My native tongue is Russian. You know, the one notoriously famous for nightmarish grammar and thick Russian mobster accent. The one that you might have seen in the movies. I speak four more languages: American English, Italian, Japanese, and Ukrainian. And actually, my university major was teaching Japanese and English. But no matter how hard my teachers tried to make the studying process as repulsive as possible, I still got hooked by language learning, what is worse, by teaching it. Even though by the end of the studying process, I was quite sure I was probably the worst teacher in the world. Just to give you the understanding, my first group of students, consisting of 13 people, gave up all their classes with me after the third class, because I was just a disaster. Okay. So here I am, teaching English so far 8 years. And both online, face-to-face, and in groups. And there were even some humble attempts to teach Japanese, but you know, the overwhelming number of characters just scares away all manga reading fans. So that really didn't work out. So throughout this period of time, I have taught to quite a lot of students, and I actually have noticed that they all have been constantly facing up to the same old problem, the same two obstacles, we would say, which is vocabulary accumulation and poor listening comprehension. And by vocabulary accumulation, I mean the fact that probably you have seen that before and you have noticed that before, that people tend to stick to a limited number of words in order to express themselves, or to use scarce number of synonyms, or not to use them at all. Just to give you an example of the game that I play with my students, I call it the 4 banned words, which is good, bad, beautiful, and interesting. And to put it short, if one of my students uses this word, I just have to stop him or her and ask to replace this word with a synonym. So whenever it goes like, my student says something like, oh, I think that's an interesting book, I say like, sorry, that's a banned word, you're supposed to replace it. So I strongly believe that it's very important for a person to make your speech more diverse using different kind of synonyms. Mm-hmm. But the question is, how do you really make people learn different kinds of words, thousands and thousands of words, in order to get your point across, if memorizing is so frustrating? And then when it comes to poor listening comprehension, which basically means the fact that people are not able to understand what natives say when they watch movies, when they have small talks with natives, when they listen to the audiobooks or podcasts, doesn't matter. In order to enhance that ability, they are supposed to listen, and listen a lot, at least 1 hour a day to native speakers speaking actual language. But how do you manage to achieve those numbers if you see your teacher only once, 2 times per week, maybe 3 times maximum? So that was kind of an issue for me. Couldn't really figure it out for quite a long time, up until I encountered the method developed by a well-known to you all, Canadian polyglot Steve Kaufman. And you see, thanks to Steve and the LingQ website that he created, I have managed to do something which I normally call listening and reading outsourcing. As you know, we usually refer the word outsourcing to the things that we don't really want to waste our time for. And this is exactly the case. You see, before, listening and reading would consume a substantial part of my class, actually stealing time from speaking, which is kind of weird because the reason why my students come to my classes is to speak. This is their top priority. They want to speak, and they want to speak fluently. And as all of you know, in order to speak fluently, you have to speak a lot. Dozens of hours, maybe hundreds of hours. But surprisingly, there's a very little room left for speaking during the class, because instead, teachers tend to do grammar exercises during the class, read some text together, maybe listen to some audio recording. So that was the problem. Okay, so now thanks to LingQ and the input method, student doesn't have to do anything involving reading or listening during the class, but he's rather encouraged to do it on his own, at home or whatever, beyond the class. So here you can see a typical lesson at LingQ. Don't worry, I'm not going to go deep inside into the whole LingQ system. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them after the talk. But to put it short, there are two key elements in every lesson, which is audio recording and its accurate transcript. And my goal is just to read it and highlight unknown words in yellow color, and also to look up those words in the various online dictionaries available, which is quite convenient. I'm going to change the color of those words as I proceed, as I see them more and more often, maybe 5, 10, 20 times, which makes actually memorization process effortless. I don't have to memorize anything. Okay, so just to give you an understanding, according to statistics in Italian, I have managed to memorize around 13,000 of words and phrases in Italian since last April from scratch. So with this thing, you can literally memorize thousands and thousands of words without actually memorizing them. Okay, and then as far as listening is concerned, students are supposed to listen to the same audio recording on some kind of a portable device. Of course, the thing that crosses my mind is a cell phone. And they're supposed to listen to that audio recording, to the text that they read, around 1 hour a day, passively, during their dead time. And by the word passively, I mean the fact that they don't have to focus when they listen. And they don't have to struggle if they don't understand something. Of course, they will not understand everything. This is very natural. But this is not the case. The case is just to listen and get immersed into the language. And gradually, it kicks in. Secondly, by the word dead time, I refer to routine. We do a lot of stuff during the day. We do chores, washing dishes, work commute, jogging, shopping, whatever. All that can be converted to language learning now. So basically what you have to do is just to turn it on, put on your headphones, turn it on, let it play like a radio at the background, and you just do your business. The main advantage of this approach is that you don't need any extra time, because you do it anyway. We all do that stuff anyway every day. Okay, now let me briefly describe my teaching framework. In other words, how I combine LingQ method and teaching English, because those are kind of a little bit different things. So, as I have mentioned before, my main goal is to make students speak during the whole class and dedicate the most of the time only to speaking and to grammar. So as far as time is concerned, I would dedicate up to 30% of the beginning of the class to oral grammar explanations in Russian. And to be honest, I don't see any apparent reason why it has to be in English. You know, there are some teachers who stick to English when they teach, and they avoid their native tongue as much as they can during the class. Honestly, I think that actually it's much easier to convey the essence of the grammar structure, grammar construction through your native tongue. And then occasionally we would do some oral grammar drills like verb conjugations using different tenses, present, past, and future. And then affirmative, negative, and question sentences. So I would give a sentence in Russian to my students, something, and then the student will go like, he calls me often, he doesn't call me often, does he call me often? He called me often, he didn't call me often, did he call me often? And so forth. So that applies not only to one tense, but all kinds of tenses. But that happens not during the every class, so when I feel that they need to kind of cheer up or enhance their grammar abilities, we do it. And then goes the main course, which is actually speaking on a wide range of topics chosen either by me or by the student, which is definitely more preferable. And here I have to point out two things. In order to activate their passive vocabulary, students cannot limit themselves only by small talking, like how are you, what's your hobby, how long have you been learning the language, and so forth. In order to really activate your vocabulary, you're supposed to speak in far more complicated stuff. You're actually supposed to challenge yourself. Art, entertainment, technologies, politics, whatever. All that is going to make you bring up all those words that you got deep inside your consciousness and to use them. And secondly, I believe that being able to initiate the conversation is one of the essential skills that differs successful language learners from those who fail. In other words, they're supposed to know what they're going to speak with me before the class. But quite often, I find myself in this situation, nevertheless, when I'm like, all right, so what would you like to speak about? And my student is like, I don't know. Do you have any ideas? What can we speak about? And then actually my role as a teacher manifests itself. Because here I have to come up with a topic which corresponds to the person's interests and hobbies, and which is supposed... Actually, it's supposed to mean that I have to be familiar with the students' interests and hobbies, and I need to know what kind of person is that, what kind of things that person finds interesting. So for example, I have a student who runs his own company, a big one, and with him definitely I would speak about future automation, about robots stealing jobs from human workers and so forth, about latest startups. On the other hand, I might have a student who's passionate about art, and with that student we will speak about dancing, painting, whatever, everything that has to do with art. So this is something that we would speak about. Well, to sum it up, we would say that here the role of the teacher himself a little bit changes, because here it's not the teacher actually, but rather an interesting conversational partner. And it's supposed to be really exciting to have a conversation with this person. And that person is supposed to be a great interviewer, because whenever there's a gap, he's supposed to ask an appropriate question in order to fill that gap. So his main goal is to keep the conversation going, keep the flow, so to speak. All right. There are some other kind of activities that I might ask my students to describe. For instance, I can ask them to describe the things that they were doing during the last weekend. Or, for example, one of my favorite activities is to describe the movie that they have recently watched. For example, a week ago, it was Nocturnal Animals by Tom Ford. One of my students was describing that. If you haven't watched that movie, it's highly recommended. It's great. Because they're supposed to describe the movie scene by scene, they have to use quite a vast vocabulary in order to do that. Okay. And here a student can just let go of everything, relax, and start speaking. Not being concerned about grammar, not being concerned about anything, actually. Just try to express himself. Meanwhile, I listen carefully, and I write down all the mistakes and unknown words of this person into one common Google Doc file. Here it is. It seems pretty raw at the moment, actually like a stream of consciousness. It's full of mistakes because I just write it down. I have no time to correct it or comment it. But this file will become a fully corrected report the following day after the class, accompanied by the audio recording made by me. And when the report and the audio recording are ready, they're going to be imported into LingQ and take a shape of a regular LingQ class, consisting of the same two key elements, the text and the audio. Now it's available for highlighting unknown words. Also, the audio recording is available for listening through the very convenient LingQ app. And then also there is statistics, so I can actually keep track of how many words I have learned today, or I'm going to learn, and so forth. Exactly. I have no time for that. I wouldn't be able to do that. Instead, you don't mind if I answer this question straight away. Instead, sometimes you can use things like Skype Recorder just to record the whole conversation. And then after the class, you can send that along with the report to them, so they could actually watch it at least one time. But people are lazy. They didn't do it. 90% of the people don't do it. No. Sometimes, occasionally, they do it. I mean, in order just to check their progress. Every once in a while, maybe in a few months, they look at themselves and they say like, "Oh, it seems like I speak better than I used to." But they don't do it on a regular basis. Okay. Yeah. Well, have you ever tried LingQ? Have you? No. Okay. So if you, all right. If you had done that you would know that actually you take. It's not about mistakes. In LingQ, it doesn't matter what kind of text you have. It's always about the words. So Steve usually describes that as a relentless pursuit of words. And it doesn't matter if those are your mistakes or if that's some kind of a text or a story or a book. So the idea is that those are the typical phrases the person uses over and over again. Like, I think, from my perspective, and he keeps doing the same old mistakes. He stumbles upon the same mistakes. And when he pays attention to that over and over again, he starts to polish that and actually eliminate those mistakes gradually. And also through listening to those mistakes, actually to listening to his own way of expressing himself, but correct it. All right? Is that answer to your question? All right. Okay. Now let me explain you briefly what the student is actually supposed to do with it, how it all works. Let's assume that the student has two classes with the teacher, with me. One is on Monday, one is on Thursday. And then after having great conversation about future and of colonizing on Mars on Monday, the following day on Tuesday morning, the student is going to get this kind of report and start reading that, highlighting words. And then when it's over, during the rest of the day, he's going to listen to it passively during his dead time, which I have described before. Then he's going to do the same on Wednesday, on Thursday, and then on Friday. All right. He will get another report. Sorry for that. He will get another report from Thursday class and actually replace the previous report with the new one and do the same. So to sum it up, the student spends around 3 days studying the same, listening and reading to the same on class for 3 days.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
Normally in LingQ, your audio completely matches the text. Normally in LingQ, the audio completely matches the text. So he's got his list of words that he made errors on. Now, is he listening to the audio of the conversation you had with him? No. Or have you recorded audio of you reading those words?
I'm recording the audio, reading those words, so it's going to be like, there's plenty of books on my shelves. Sheep hunting. It depends on your taste, and so forth.
Okay.
Nothing additional, only words. So it must be accurate, like at LingQ. Mm-hmm. All right. A little bit louder, please. Could you speak? Yes, the app reads.
I just wanted to ask, like, how this process of like correction works exactly. I mean, so you enter, let's say, either an audio or a text file containing some mistakes, right? And then automatically it gets read by the app and recorded.
No.
No. Okay.
Well, the app actually uses the Google Translate in order to read every separate word or phrase, which is actually the student is welcome to do, but he's supposed to, or she is supposed to have a long recording of the whole mistakes that he's going to listen to passively during the whole day, and that is going to be recorded by me.
Oh, okay. So you do the actual work. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Quite time consuming, but so far there is no artificial intelligence to do it instead of me. Well, it depends on the person. I would say that if the person wants to enhance his pronunciation, that at home he could listen, for example, to one phrase, stop it, and then try to repeat, imitating the pronunciation.
In the classroom?
Yeah.
In the classroom, they don't speak simultaneously. You don't have many groups speaking simultaneously. You have people speaking one at a time, and then you listen to the errors and you correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to clear it out straight away. I teach via Skype, one-to-one.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thanks.
So yeah, it's via Skype. And during the class, they don't do it. They do it at home. So basically, this is their homework. There is no some particular homework after every single class. Every day, after every class, they get a report. Plus, they are supposed to read something on their own, some kind of text that they find on their own. And I encourage them to find the material themselves. There was one more question.
Do you write in that file all of the mistakes or just those that are repeated over and over? And can there be a situation that there are just too many mistakes at a time and a student won't be able to memorize all these structures anyway?
It's not a problem. I mean, I don't even expect that they're going to memorize all the mistakes. It's not about that. It's just about constant exposing yourself to the same mistakes, and gradually most of them is going to kick in. It's not about perfectionism. I write, let's say, normally, a 60-minute class will provide the student with a report of A4 size. So there's an A4 mistakes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so there is one more thing I should mention. In this case, is writing. Oh yeah. Besides, all students are going to have all their lessons unified in one single place, unified in a course named after them. So it's easier for me, for the person, just to have all the reports structured one after another. Besides, this is the way for me to calculate how many hours of speaking they had. So I set the goal, for example, 100 hours of speaking. So we can see that we have, so far we have had 32 classes. It means we have like 70 classes more to speak. And then writing. Writing is not ignored either. So the best way to work with the writing would be to outsource it as well through such brilliant resources as LingQ or italki, when the students can have their writing corrected by native speakers. But another option is that we dedicated the beginning of the class to getting over the text and eliminating mistakes together instead of grammar. And then when the text is ready, when it's fully corrected, then guess what? It's going to be imported to LingQ. I'm going to make an audio recording and import it to LingQ. And the student is going to listen to his own story, to his own text, but this time corrected. LangQ, yeah.
What is that?
LangQ is a great source, check it out. I think it's the place where you can just post any kind of text of any size and it gets corrected by native speakers.
Sorry?
And it gets corrected by native speakers. Actually, you can see the way it happens here. So you get your sentence and then there is a sentence which is corrected by a native speaker.
Unfortunately, they're not taking any
Unfortunately, that's the problem. So this is the second option. We have to actually work together with the student. You can do the same. You can more or less the same on italki. So there is a notebook in italki, and you can post something and ask, "Can I have it corrected by native speaker, please?" And some of my students did it, and they got it corrected. They got it corrected. Okay. Yeah, so sometimes people say that they criticize me saying that, okay, those are the things that your students might do when you control them, but how do you actually make them read and listen every day on their own? I mean, apart from reports and from mistakes, because there is no face-to-face contact and motivation easily fades away. In other words, how do you sustain motivation remotely? Because I teach online. But from my experience, I can definitely say that there's no significant difference in terms of online and offline motivation. If the person is more proactive, then he or she is definitely going to meet own expectations. On the contrary, if the person tends to be more passive, there's hardly anything one can do. So I have two kinds of students, to put it simple. One kind of students is actually feel themselves like they are being interviewed. So unless you ask them a question, they won't tell you anything. And this is very frustrating, and this is so exhausting. On the other hand, you get people who actually, they can't wait to express themselves. The only problem is that they lack words. But they always can ask me. And those people are the best, for sure. So this is it as far as English teaching is concerned. I have one more thing I would like to tell you about, but maybe you have questions about the teaching right now. No? So far, no? Okay. Let's go ahead. All right, so 5 minutes. Okay. There is another project of mine which is called Ikigai, and this is an online coaching where I teach people not a particular language like English, but I give them tools in order to master any language. For those of you who are not familiar with Japanese, the word Ikigai can be translated like a driving force that makes us get up in the morning and do the things that we do the best. So, yeah, I was impressed too. So in short, the coaching consists of two parts. It's input and output. And so every of them lasts for 2 months. There is a 2-month break in between because people are fed up with me. And then the first coaching and the second one, actually, their goal is to give a complete guidance to LingQ method, to teach people how to use it, because it's actually far more tricky than it seems, and it takes a little bit more time in order to master it. And during the input methods, I basically teach them how to read themselves without any assistance from the side of the teacher, from scratch, from the intermediate level. It doesn't really matter because I have people studying different languages and people of very different level. And then I also teach them how to improve their listening skills also on their own. They don't need anyone for that. By the end of the coaching, they're supposed to increase their listening comprehension by 50% and acquire at least 1,000 new words. Of course, it depends on the level, but if we take a person who starts from scratch, they learn 1,000 new words in those 2 months by themselves, without any assistance. I should also stress that people are not encouraged to speak during this period. The focus is only on reading and listening. Speaking is something that we do during the second part, which is an active coaching. And here it's kind of funny, but the main task of the students here is to find a tutor, either offline or online, it doesn't really matter. And then they're going to instruct those tutors and to teach them the teaching framework that I have described above. In other words, they're supposed to teach the tutors how to dedicate up to 90% of their class to speaking, how to make recordings, how to get the feedback reports, and that's it. And they're lucky enough to find a person who is actually willing to implement those elements into their teaching method. Then it's just and then they're gonna combine listening and reading outsourcing together with the constant speaking practice. It's just a matter of time until they start speaking more fluently, I would say. So in the end, I would say that from my experience, I can see that people have different kinds of approaches to language learning and also to teaching. And all of those methods, as far as I'm concerned, can be both monetized and conveyed to other people. So I would like to encourage you to think of the way you could actually help out those other people who are actually desperate to master even one language, even though you speak many languages. All right? So let's make them believe that it's actually possible, and let's make them sort this problem out once and forever. Well, this is it. If you have any questions regarding LingQ, you can find me in the hall. There is a LingQ desk out there. I'll be happy to answer all your questions. And also, if I'm not there, there are coupons for using LingQ for $1 first month. It doesn't matter if you have an account on LingQ or you don't. You can use it anyway. All right. So this is it. If you have any questions, still. Let's see.
Yeah, we're now doing the Slido questions. So post it on Slido.
I'll start with those questions. Do the students have to do a LingQ as their homework? How do you track progress? Yes, they are supposed to do a LingQ as their homework. There is no other homework except for that. How I track their progress? Actually through speaking. There is no better way to see if there is a very accurate and clear indicator when you see if the person actually progresses using new words. If the person sticks to the same words, interesting, good, bad, beautiful, over and over again, he doesn't read. He doesn't read and listen. I can always say that. Okay, so there is no other thing like, okay, let's check your homework. No. There is no such thing. It's a matter of motivation. It's the matter of... The key is actually interest. And yeah, this is something I forgot to tell. So I think the key to success in this way, how to keep the person motivated, is to teach the person how to find interesting material. And not to find that material and provide it to the person, but rather to teach the person to find it himself or herself. So let's compare it to feeding your guest with the fish. Instead of feeding your guest with the fish, you teach the person how to catch it and how to cook it himself. So when the person develops this skill, he will be reading every day, listening every day, just like we do in our own language, like I do in Russian. So. If you send a text list of the students' errors from the conversation, don't you risk the students memorizing, reinforcing the erroneous forms? No, I think there is a big risk out there. No, I don't think so. Anyway, I always understand that I'm not a native speaker and there are some mistakes and all this stuff, but I'm just a buffer zone between the native speaker and between zero, okay? So I'm right in the middle. And I know whatever kind of mistakes they still keep doing, they will eliminate them once they get to speaking with native speakers. Next, probably you've tried other approaches to teaching before. This method really better? Can you describe how the results of your students changed after trying? Yes, I can definitely say, well, the easiest, I think the most obvious thing that people were actually giving up having classes with me before I switched to this system. Their normal complaint would be that, okay, it's really nice to have a conversation with you, it's really interesting and so forth, but I don't feel that my vocabulary is growing. And besides, I don't understand many things. I don't understand when I watch movies still, even though we've been having classes for 6 months, 1 year. No. After that, no. People still complain because people like complaining. But they complain in English, and this is the main difference. Okay, finally, laughter. Okay. Which other language apps would you recommend when teaching? I wouldn't recommend apps. I would definitely recommend LingQ for having your text corrected. I don't use anything else for... because I found everything I wanted in LingQ, because that's the method that suits me the most. Probably I would recommend HelloTalk for finding native speakers, but again, it's not the best one. All right, next one. Do you write in a file all of the mistakes or just those that are repeated? I think that was the question. All right. People get tired of using the same approach for a long time, so what do you do to break the routine? Okay. Actually, when you spend the most of the time speaking about different subjects during the class, it's never a routine. Yeah. Well, people might get tired of LingQ, of reading something, and then I would encourage them to read, not to read, but to watch TV series in English with subs or without subs. But I actually always try to figure out what kind of the content they are reading now. Is it interesting? Or it's boring? Maybe it's boring and they struggle with it. They torture themselves with some kind of classic English book they don't really like. Then we have to change that. It's important to know that the number of words, LingQ days you have memorized includes all the various forms, conjugation, plurals. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so if LingQ says, for example, that you learn 3,000 words, that includes all the conjugations,
That's true. That's true.
all the plurals, and I would say, let's say for Spanish, if it says you learn 2,000 words, well, you really learn, I don't know, 800 or 600 or something like that, because every form of that word.
Yeah. But it's not a big deal for me. I mean, for my students too. Especially in the beginning, people don't really care about it. I mean, if they start from scratch, they're not concerned about that. Okay. Is this here for no reason? Okay, maybe. Is writing more important for everyone? Not for everyone. No. Actually, people are lazy to write. Definitely. They are lazy to... This is something that just makes experience shows very clear. People are lazy to write. If you ask them to write anything, they say, okay. If you even choose the subject, they try to put it off for a long time. But if they do, they still, well, they practice occasionally. But this is, I would say writing is like supplementary thing, like additional thing in this way. It's, of course, it's great. It's a great tool, but people are reluctant to use it. Okay, I have run out of the questions here, so I would like to hear the questions from the audience.
This question moved up because it got some likes, I guess. How do you teach your students to find interesting materials when they are still at a beginner level?
Yes, I teach them how to use the how to use the library, which is inside LingQ, which is installed there, and I use the hidden abilities of LingQ library because what you see in the front usually it's not enough, and people don't find what they kind of like, and they don't get hooked, and they just give it up. So I teach them to look for more diverse material gradually. And then I teach them how to import the material that they might find themselves in the internet into LingQ. Yes, please.
Do you work for LingQ?
Well, we would say, I don't know, I collaborate with them. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I would say Steve is just like my mentor, language mentor. Yeah.
Okay. Would you suggest, how would you suggest to use LingQ for group classes in presence, not online?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have never tried that before, and this is something I would like to implement. For example, with kids. One of my ideas is how we actually change with kids.
Kids, yeah.
How we can change the teaching framework that we have right now at schools. But at the moment, that this is just hypothesis. Mm-hmm. This is not real experience. When I have it, I'm going to tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Yes.
And have a great day.